Hello, welcome to the Research and Disinformation series. These videos were made possible by a partnership between the library and the Rhetoric Department at the University of Iowa. My name is Chris Way, and all my work on the series has been in collaboration with Tim Arnold and Katie Hassman.
Today we will be talking about a critical reading strategy called lateral reading. This critical reading strategy was created by a group of researchers at the Graduate School of Education at Stanford University, who have studied the online information-seeking behaviors of students for many years. In 2017, they conducted a study in which they asked 3 different subject groups to review information from 2 organizations, the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American College of Pediatricians. What the researchers didn't tell the subject participants is that these 2 organizations are quite different from each other. The former organization, which I will call the Academy, is a professional organization that has been around for over 100 years. It has 67,000 members and publishes many publications, including the very influential peer-reviewed journal Pediatrics. The latter organization, which I will call the college, has been around for 20 years, has only 500 members, and publishes no peer-reviewed publications. The college also has a secret, which you will not find them discussing on their website. The college was founded in protest against the Academy's support for adoption by gay couples. The Southern Poverty Law Center lists the college as a hate group. Again, you will not see any of this discussed on the college's website, even on their About page. So the Stanford researchers asked their 3 groups of study participants to use any method they would normally use to make a judgment call about the relative credibility, the trustworthiness of these 2 organizations. Now let's talk about the study participants themselves. The 3 groups included one group of professional fact-checkers who work for news organizations like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. The second group included historians who had all earned a doctorate degree in history and were teaching at major universities in the United States. Finally, the third group consisted of Stanford University undergraduates. I should note that all of the participants were told explicitly that they could use whatever resources they like and had the entire internet available to them in making their decision about the credibility of these 2 organizations. Here's how they did. As you can see, 100% of the fact-checkers correctly came to the conclusion that the Academy was the more credible of the 2 organizations. Only half of the historians, however, were able to make that correct judgment call. About 40% of them said that the 2 organizations had about the same level of credibility, which is, of course, not the case. Now look at the students. Almost 2/3 of them incorrectly identified the college, the cloaked hate group, as the more credible of the 2 organizations. It's worth noting here that Stanford University is often the most exclusive university in the United States. Only the best and brightest students are accepted into Stanford. So even if the smartest students are unable to differentiate a trustworthy source from an untrustworthy source, then we have a problem. Now, the researchers noticed something when they reviewed the responses of their subject participants and how these participants came to their conclusions. All of the participants who made the correct judgment call used the same critical reading strategy, and that strategy is what the Stanford researchers would eventually call lateral reading. Also, all the participants who were unsuccessful used the same strategy themselves, which researchers would come to call vertical reading. So let's talk now about the differences between these 2 reading strategies. Vertical readers, when they find information from an unfamiliar source, try to determine the credibility of the source by staying on the website, scrolling up and down, reading it closely, and asking themselves questions like, how does the website look? They assume that if the website looks professional, then it must be credible. Is the information they're looking for easy to find? Does the website have good usability? Is it user-friendly? If so, then it must be trustworthy. Does the website cite other sources? The historians in the Stanford study were persuaded to think that the College of Pediatricians was credible because they cited peer-reviewed journals. But literally anyone can stick a citation onto something. Vertical readers will try to determine a website's credibility by looking for things like a .org address in the website's URL. But these days, anyone can have a .org address. Vertical readers will look for other aesthetic clues like ads or a donate button, but all organizations solicit donations, and most publications, trustworthy or not, host ads on their websites. So I think at this point, you can see that these strategies aren't very useful. You can't really tell very much by scrolling up and down a website and trying to determine its credibility by just looking at it. Now, lateral readers, unlike vertical readers, don't stay on the website. When they find information from an unfamiliar source, they verify it first by consulting a variety of other sources. They open new browser tabs and conduct a series of searches using key information components from their original source. They read across rather than up and down, hence the name lateral reading. In our next video, Katie, Chris, and I will each do a demonstration of how to laterally read different kinds of sources. But before we do that, I'd like to give you some tips on how to read laterally. First of all, you should always have these questions in the back of your mind. Who is behind the information, and what do other sources have to say? When you do your searches, use certain keywords from your original source. All sources will have at least 4 key information components, including publication name, which is usually at the very top of the website, above the title, name of the organization that funds the publication, which can sometimes be found either at the very bottom of the website or on the website's About page, author name, and content. Remember that if you can't find a publication name, organization name, or author name, you can always search for information about the content of your source. And you can do this in a number of ways. If there's a title, you can simply copy and paste that into your search engine. If there is no title, then you can try to identify a thesis statement or argument that your source is trying to make and select keywords from that statement. Proper nouns or names of people, places, and organizations are usually going to give you the most relevant search results. If you can't identify a thesis statement, try to summarize in your head what the source is about and use that summary in your search. This may sound very abstract right now, but we will demonstrate how this process works in our next video.
It's gonna be big.
So what you're looking for when you conduct these searches are about 3 to 5 new sources that discuss the credibility of your original source. Familiar, trusted sources are usually best, although I don't think you should necessarily limit yourself to sources you already know. What's most important is that you survey at least 3 sources at minimum, with 5 being what you should ideally try to get. And what you're looking for is information that will help you come to a decision about the credibility of your original source. If you find that multiple sources claim that your original source is well known for spreading disinformation, conspiracy theories, fake news, then that's a pretty good indication that you shouldn't listen to anything the source has to say. If you discover that your source has a particular kind of bias, and especially if they are hiding that bias, as the American College of Pediatricians is, then you might want to take what that source has to say with a grain of salt and only consider it alongside other sources that do what they can to mitigate bias. If you discover that your original source has been around for many years and you don't find anything negative about it, and especially if it's peer-reviewed, then you can feel pretty confident in trusting it. Now I'm going to tell you something that might surprise you. It's okay to use Wikipedia as one of your 3 to 5 sources.
Hooray!
In fact, Wikipedia is probably the single best source for information about contemporary news outlets, businesses, and other kinds of organizations. Now, that doesn't mean you should only use Wikipedia. Make sure that other sources corroborate the information you find on Wikipedia. Corroboration between multiple sources is your ultimate goal. Lastly, it's important to note that no information is information itself. If you can't find anything about your original source, that means you're dealing with a source that does not have an established reputation. And this means that you should proceed with caution if you need to proceed at all. Thanks for joining me today. And remember that in our next episode, we will put lateral reading to the test and see how we can use it in the wilds of the open internet.